to you about that breaking news before the break. We are just learning that a judge has denied another one of rapper Sean Diddy Combs' requests to be released on bail. Remember, he's behind bars at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn waiting for his trial to get started. This for us. We were waiting for this decision. We got it in now. What do we know?
All right. Well, it's 5 pages, and the takeaway here is that the judge is saying that no condition or combination of conditions will reasonably assure the safety of the community. And that was what New York prosecutors were saying. I was in court twice last week, and I listened to these prosecutors say that he was a danger to the community. And they showed that video, that surveillance video of him from 2016, brutally beating his then girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, saying that he has a propensity to violence, and that alone is a reason why we cannot agree to the proposed bail package. Now, his team had offered $50 million, a home of his in Miami as collateral, and they said that he would live in an apartment on Manhattan's Upper East Side, monitored by 24-hour security, that he would only talk to his attorneys, that he would only have, certain family members on a pre-approved list, and that, he would actually be under stricter conditions than he is at the jail in Brooklyn. But clearly, this is the third time.
Yeah.
This judge not buying it.
What was Diddy like in court? You were there twice last week. What was his demeanor like?
I mean, he was smiling on Friday, turned around and looked at his children. All of his children were there except for his infant child. His mother was there. He looked a little thinner. He looked a little worse for wear. But he has seemed upbeat and positive. And a few days earlier on Wednesday, so a week ago today, his legal team had a win, because his team was able to say that New York prosecutors wrongly obtained 16 pages of notes from his jail cell during a routine sweep, that it had his defense strategy, it had witnesses that they planned to call at the criminal trial in May, and the judge agreed that those should have been protected under attorney-client privilege. So there was a feeling today among reporter friends of mine and people in the building here that, maybe there's a chance that the judge, given he's taking several days to think about this, he asked for both sides to write a letter, that he might release him. But this is the third time. His team, we're waiting for a response from them, from his legal team. They could appeal again. But we were talking to Danny Savalos earlier, and he said, they would have to propose something new and different to potentially be successful for a fourth attempt.
You wouldn't expect to see that headline, Shah. After a stunning incident within prison walls, Diddy, the music mogul known for his extravagant lifestyle, private parties, and empire that defined an age, is apparently pleading for mercy. He was once acclaimed as the king of hip-hop, but is now trapped in a tornado of shame and desperation. Let's get started on this captivating tale that has everyone wondering how we got here.
Tonight, we are hearing from Diddy for the first time since a disturbing video from 2016 surfaced showing the superstar violently assaulting his then-girlfriend. Sean Combs says he's disgusted by his own actions and not asking for forgiveness. Adrian Broaddus has more, with a warning that some of what you're about to see is hard to watch.
I'm so sorry.
Tonight, a 67-second apology from Sean Combs.
But I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable.
Diddy publicly denied all the allegations against him, but now?
I was disgusted then when I did it. I'm disgusted now. I went and I sought out professional help.
Ventura filed a lawsuit against Combs in November, stating that around March of 2016, at a former Intercontinental Hotel in Century City, Mr. Combs became extremely intoxicated and punched Miss Ventura in the face, giving her a black eye. It was settled less than 24 hours later. Today, Ventura's attorney responding, Combs' most recent statement is more about himself than the many people he has hurt.
It's an admission likely without a lot of consequence.
Could this video mean anything for future cases?
If Diddy is sued civilly or prosecuted for other crimes, then it might be possible to get these videos into evidence.
The LA District Attorney says the case is outside the statute of limitations.
I'm committed to be a better man each and every day.
These are for people who are genuinely sorry, not for deviants whose life purpose has been to wreak havoc on everyone around them. Adrian Broadus, NBC News.
Imagine a man who used to stroll the red carpet and run entire boardrooms, suddenly surrounded by cold, hard walls and a completely other type of crowd. The reports coming out of the prison are intriguing, but they are also shady. Even Diddy's most devoted fans are in disbelief about what transpired during that tumultuous altercation and, more significantly, what this means for a man whose reputation has already suffered greatly as a result of the alleged jump.
From his $48 million Miami mansion to hell on earth where chaos reigns. Just some of the words used to describe the Metropolitan Detention
and conceal his conduct.
He is not the first high-profile inmate to pass through these walls. Ghislaine Maxwell, R. Kelly, Pharma Bro, Martin Shkreli, and crypto fraudster Sam Bankman-Fried, all as they waited for their federal criminal trials, called this jail home. But the conditions of the prison are far from homey, notoriously described as, quote, dreadful, as one judge put it. Some on the bench have even moved away from sending nonviolent defendants. 3 years alone, 4 inmates have died by suicide. And violence is not the only issue. Accusations of medical neglect, staffing shortages, smuggling of drugs, some allegedly facilitated by employees. At least 6 staff members charged with crimes in the last 5 years, according to the AP. Some accused of accepting bribes and providing contraband.
I've had clients describe NBC as hell, as the worst conditions they've been in.
Lance A. Clark is a federal defense attorney who's been there many times.
Now, if the government is going to mandate that they are responsible for your well-being, they have to ensure the safety of your well-being.
Occupy the streets until they get heat.
In the winter of 2019, protests over a power outage left inmates without light or heat for a week in the cold.
I understand how cold it must be in those cells, and not to have any electricity, any lights, and to not be able to communicate with your family is just inhumane.
The prison has about 1,200 detainees and is the only federal prison in the nation's largest city.
Let's go back in time to see how Diddy, a legendary character, got into jail in the first place. Fans and critics were both astonished by his arrest, which was linked to L's claims of grave wrongdoing.
Those individuals allegedly included high-ranking supervisors in the business, personal oil, personal lubricant, extra linens, and lighting. March 2016 incident at the LA hotel that I mentioned earlier, a member of the hotel security staff intervened, and Combs attempted to bribe the staff member with a stack of cash to make sure that what happened was kept quiet. And as the indictment alleges, in late 2023, after public allegations were made about Combs' crimes, he and others pressured witnesses and victims to stay silent, including by making phone calls to witnesses and victims. Who had attempted to flee. As part of this investigation, in March of this year, special agents from HSI executed search warrants at Combs' residences in Miami and Los Angeles. They also executed a warrant for Combs' electronic devices. During those searches, agents seized evidence of the crimes charged in this indictment. They seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 defaced Here are some of the items that we recovered during the searches. As you can see here, this is a drum magazine, large capacity, and it contains, I believe, 59 rounds. I mentioned as well, we recovered 3 AR-15s. This is a close-up shot of one of the AR-15s, and you can see right here, the serial number has been thoroughly defaced. Another picture of more ammunition and parts of 2 AR-15s right there. Now, I want to be clear. Or wealthy or famous you may be. No one should doubt our commitment on that.
This wasn't a small accident. From the outside, it appeared that Diddy would survive the storm, but prison is a great equalizer. No one is spared, not even a millionaire, and the charges were serious enough to tear away the layers of power and influence he had painstakingly established over decades.
Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs back behind bars, a magistrate judge denying him bail, saying that there were no conditions that she could conceive of that would make her confident that he would appear again for other court appearances. The judge saying, "My concern is this is a crime that happens behind closed doors." Diddy's lawyers had argued that he had made good faith efforts by showing up in New York, ready to surrender to face these charges, but prosecutors said that he could not be trusted, that he has a history of trying to intimidate witnesses, including some who are going to be witnesses in this case. They urged the judge to remand him. She did. And when the judge did, Diddy, who was sitting at the defense table with his attorneys, did not show any signs of emotion. He took a sip of water before he was led out of the courtroom by the U.S. Marshals. Now, his lawyers have vowed to fight this. They are going to be back in court on Wednesday before the judge who will oversee this trial and try to get Diddy to be released.
Let's return to the altercation. Although eyewitness reports are hazy, this is what we have discovered. What is even more shocking is the sheer audacity of it all. Diddy isn't just any prisoner. He's a public figure with influence that goes well beyond those walls, and in the heat of the moment, none of that mattered. The incident began as a heated argument between Diddy and a group of inmates. Words turned into shoves, and before anyone could intervene, fists flew. The aftermath was brutal. Diddy reportedly suffered multiple injuries and had to be escorted to the prison infirmary.
Hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs will try for the third time to get bail today while happened earlier today. Alex, there was already a hearing earlier this week looking at notes taken out of Sean Combs' cell. How could that impact his chances at bail? His team says that raiding his cell, monitoring his calls, is not allowed and not fair to allow him to prep for a trial.
You know, it'll be interesting to see if this ends up happening. We just got out of this hearing nearly 2 hours long, and they only talked about these notes at the very beginning. They discussed essentially whether or not they said the word legal on them, and there was a bit of a discrepancy from the defense. Essentially, they backtracked on this even just a little bit. Essentially, he has these binders, legal pads that, according to the photographs from the raid on his cell, did not say the word legal. All of a sudden, now they do. And the defense couldn't exactly say when the word legal was written, and that matters because if it said legal on any of these notes, that is part of attorney-client privilege. Those are things that should not have been taken out of his cell. So there is a big question about that. But Nate, the bigger issue here now is he going to get out? As of tonight, he is still going back to his jail cell. But next week, we will know whether or not he is going to be able to get out until his trial. So the big discussion here, according to the government, is can they trust him? He has proposed a whole laundry list of things that he's willing to do if they'll let him out. Things like 24/7 security, things like not speaking to anybody, not having internet access, phone access, unless it's through this 24/7 security company. But the government and pretrial services, who is separate from the prosecution, they're not buying it. They're saying that they cannot trust Sean Combs to not follow the law or to not follow the rules that he has even set out for himself. They say because he's already broken the rules that the Bureau of Prisons and his own counsel have laid out for him within a jail cell. So they're essentially saying if he can't do it there, how could he do it in the comfort of an apartment? They had tried to get him released to Star Island, his home on Star Island right in Miami, because it's an island and there's a dock there. The judge immediately said absolutely not, because in theory he could, escape that way.
Everyone is now wondering why Diddy was singled out. Some believe it was envy, since a man of his size entering the criminal justice system is sure to draw attention, both positive and negative, while others believe it was a question of power dynamics. Maybe Diddy sought to make his presence known in a way that certain people didn't like, but whatever the reason, one thing is certain. The once untouchable mogul is now exposed, vulnerable, and begging for some sort of peace.
A flight risk, but that is a concern. So what his defense team has now proposed instead is bringing him to an Upper East Side apartment, a 3-bedroom apartment, where they say they would have 2 security guards inside of his apartment at all times, 1 downstairs. Again, the judge has not really said whether or not he is keen on this. He didn't really disclose if he's leaning one way or another, but he did ask a lot of questions about what that would look like. Again, the government not buying it, as well as pretrial services, which is the organization, the department that would have to make sure that everything was on the up and up.
Yeah, Alex, I wonder also, whether there was discussion of that now infamous video back from 2016 of Combs beating his girlfriend at the time, Cassie, the entertainer. Did that get discussed at all in the hearing today?
It did, because the defense is saying that the prosecution basically took the video that CNN originally published and gave it to the judge in that exact form, which is that it was edited down and they say out of order. They say essentially that the video ends with Cassie being dragged back to the room. They say that's not how it happened. They say it's important to know that that is not how it happened. But according to the defense, they say, or according to the government rather, they say it doesn't really matter, because what you can see is what happened there. Her getting beaten up. Defense maintains that that wasn't the case. They maintain that the fight actually happened because he was just trying to get his phone and clothing back. But even still, this video was even used today in the discussion about how violent they believe Sean Combs is and why he cannot be released on bail.
Yeah, Alex, I read about 90% politics all day long, but I mean, this is one of the stories that, breaks through, especially coming from the entertainment industry. Such a big entertainer for such a long time. Safe to say that this story not going anywhere anytime soon. National correspondent Alex Miller live in New York. Thanks for the insight.
Even more intriguing is the way Diddy is managing this new phase of his life. Rumors indicate that he is frantically trying to patch things up and steer clear of more conflicts. According to sources, he has been attempting to use connections and favors to get out of difficulty by promising protection. However, in a nation where survival frequently depends on physical strength, charm and money may truly make all the difference.
Well, Sean Combs still behind bars as we speak after a judge denied his request for bail a second time. And the place where he's locked up now getting a lot of attention. The Metropolitan Detention Center, the only federal jail in New York City, is known for violence, poor conditions, and a string of celebrity detainees. And Diddy's attorneys want him out. NBC News' Yasmin Youssian has more.
Pharma bro Martin Shkreli, and crypto fraudster Sam Bankman-Fried, all as they waited for their federal criminal trials, called this jail home. But the conditions of the prison are far from homey, notoriously described as, quote, dreadful, as one judge put it. Some on the bench have even moved away from sending nonviolent defendants there. Alone, 4 inmates have died by suicide. And violence is not the only issue. Accusations of medical neglect, staffing shortages, smuggling of drugs, some allegedly facilitated by employees. At least 6 staff members charged with crimes in the last 5 years, according to the AP. Some accused of accepting bribes and providing contraband.
I've had clients describe NBC as hell, as the worst conditions they've been in.
Lance A. Clark is a federal defense attorney who's been there many times.
Now, if the government...
In a letter to the judge, his lawyer cited an NBC News exclusive that revealed contradictions in the accuser's account.
His attorney filing a letter to the judge, citing an NBC News exclusive that found inconsistencies with the accuser's story.
You should always advocate for yourself.
It comes after our interview with a 38-year-old mother from Alabama who accuses Sean Diddy Combs and Sean J. asked us not to reveal her identity.
What made you want to come forward?
Because I think that I've been quiet long enough.
She says that she went to the MTV Video Music Awards in 2000. The woman says she spoke to Combs' limo driver, who offered her a ride to an after party. She says at the party she spoke to musician Benji Madden and his brother.
I'm talking to Benji Madden about his tattoo. It's the Last Supper.
In a statement to NBC News, a representative for the Maddens confirmed that they did not attend the 2000 VMAs and that they were on tour in the Midwest at that time. Raped her. She says she ran to a gas station where she called her father, who picked her up.
We rode home in silence. She didn't ask me what happened.
In an interview with NBC News, her father said he could not verify the claims. I feel like I would remember that, and I don't, he said. When we asked the woman about the contradictions in a phone interview on Friday, she said she stands by her statements. I have made some mistakes, she said, in remembering what happened 24 years ago. Honestly, what is the clearest is what happened to me. In a statement to NBC News, Sean Carter said, this incident didn't happen. True justice is coming. We fight from victory, not for victory. A representative for Combs called the suit a shameless money grab.
Is any part of you scared coming out against such powerful people?
I'm scared of what could happen, but I'm more afraid of letting it eat me alive from the inside out.
Chloe Malas, NBC News.
His once loyal admirers are now split. Some contend that he is suffering the consequences of his deeds. What about his long-term fans? Diddy was the epitome of success, and millions were inspired by Rich's narrative. It is definitely devastating to watch him in this situation, as social media is awash with responses that range from shock and rage to sadness and incredulity. Trending hashtags like #JusticeFor and #RemainStrongDI demonstrate that in spite of everything, he still has a devoted fan base. But only time will tell if that devotion endures.
This is Michael Moore. Michael's with me now. Let's just deal with the, if you will, the logistics before we turn to the gravamen. The refusal of bail in these circumstances, bearing in mind he'd flown to New York to turn himself in, so he was preempted by the police. Are you surprised that he was refused bail?
Well, I'm glad to be with you. I'm not surprised at all. I mean, the nature of these charges are so serious, the allegations are so serious, that it's not surprising that this hearing he was denied bail. The judge has to look at things like whether or not he can be expected to return to court. Does he have the manner and means to perhaps evade law enforcement and not appear? Is he a flight risk, in other words? And so I think at this point the judge has decided that the fact that he was doing these acts in secret did not obviously lend much to his statements that he will be open and available. So I'm not surprised at all. But again, we will see what the district judge now does since the case has been, or the decision has been at least appealed up, whether or not there are some terms of bail that might make the court comfortable that he will show up for court.
Now, turning to the charges themselves, they are amongst the most serious, which would involve very long periods of incarceration if convicted. But it also raises the question, if there was a plea deal at some point in the future, to plead down from these very serious charges, the lesser accepted offences would also be serious and could end up in prison.
I think any plea discussion of the case, because you have such significant impact on the victims of the case, would necessitate that he be sentenced to prison in some way. I just don't think that a judge would take and place him on probation or some type of house arrest given the allegations that were made, no matter what the plea discussions were. And remember, the prosecution and a defendant can negotiate a plea amongst themselves, but a court has the decision finally on whether or not to accept that recommendation, and ultimately has the authority to make a decision about whether or not a prison sentence is appropriate. We operate under the federal sentencing guidelines. Those give the judge some parameters to consider, things like whether or not somebody accepts responsibility, whether or not there have been an adverse impact on victims, whether or not there's been excessive fraud and deceit through the investigation of the case. Those things come into play as we talk about what might happen if there is a plea agreement that's ultimately reached.
It's important to remember, besides obviously he's innocent until proven guilty at the moment, but it's also important to remember that not being a nice person, being an unnice person, if you will, is not a crime. They're going to have to prove the elements of the offences in these cases. Just because he might not be likable is not enough to get you locked up.
Well, I mean, that's exactly right.
What transpires next will determine whether this tragedy becomes a footnote in his life or the turning point in his decline. Will he be able to rise above it? Is this mayhem or the end of the road for one of the most recognizable figures in hip-hop?
Allegations, and he has a right to have his case tried in court, and the government has to prove that he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The indictment, the allegations, we heard from the United States Attorney in New York, these are sordid details. They are these are things that a judge is going to have to consider as we go forward.
Finally, back to the logistics, if you will. He was prepared to turn himself in today, so we understand. The arrest removed from him the almost right to bail. Since I was going to turn myself in, I'm entitled to bail if I'd had turned myself in. By arresting him, the prosecution removed that possibility.
Well, they certainly removed the argument for him to make that he had turned himself in. It's mighty hard to, when you fly into town on a jet and you're there, to argue that there's no possible way you could be a flight risk. And that's one of the things the judge would consider. Another thing would be the nature of the charges, the allegations that were made. They spanned a long period of time. There were efforts to influence witnesses, it sounds like. At least that's been an allegation that has been made. These are all things that get put into that decision. The fact that he just would have turned himself in, that would have been in his favor. But there are so many other factors at play that it wouldn't have surprised me to see a court dig into those a little bit in making a decision on whether bail would be appropriate. And at this stage, a judge has determined that bail is not appropriate. He has a right, and has done apparently so, to appeal that decision and have another hearing on it. At that time, his lawyers will have a chance to make these arguments about the efforts that he was making to cooperate and to get there. The term cooperation, frankly, sometimes gets to be a little loosey-goosey, depending on who's wanting to use the argument to their benefit.
We'll talk more in the future. I'm grateful.
Business empire he controlled to carry out criminal activity. Say a little bit more about the charges. As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, so that they would participate, and that Combs hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims, at times by their hair. On one occasion in March of 2016, that conduct was captured on video and later reported in the media. Specifically, Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a victim in a Los Angeles hotel when the victim was attempting to flee. As alleged, these assaults often resulted in injuries to the victims, which took days or weeks to heal. In addition to the violence, the indictment he used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims. And the indictment alleges that he maintained control over the victims in several ways, including by giving them drugs, by giving and threatening to take away financial support or housing, by promising them career opportunities, by monitoring their whereabouts, and even by dictating their physical appearance. Because of all of this, the indictment alleges that the victims did not believe they could refuse Combs without risking their security or facing more abuse. The indictment also alleges other acts of violence undertaken by Combs. The indictment alleges that on more than one occasion, Combs carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten victims and witnesses. Now, Combs did not do this all on his own. As I mentioned, Combs has been charged with RICO conspiracy. He used his business and employees of that business and other
are on Diddy, and his every gesture, word, and movement will be examined more closely than ever in a society that values redemption tales as highly as scandals. It's still possible for Diddy's journey to take an unforeseen turn.
The A-list celebrities linked to Diddy and his alleged are trying to keep their identities private. That's according to Houston attorney Tony Busby. He says he's already privately settled some of the accused. That's after his firm sent out demand letters. Diddy is currently locked up and facing multiple charges, including 2 requests to be released. Diddy has been denied bail. His mother, Janice Combs, has spoken out for the first time since this arrest. She released a statement. It reads, "It is heartbreaking to see my son judged not for the truth, but for a narrative created out of lies. My son is not the monster they have painted him to be, and he deserves a chance to tell his side." Joining us to talk about it here on The Factor Uncensored tonight, we have defense attorney and former Harris County personality, J Mac from 97.9 The Box. Glad to have you all here on The Factor Uncensored. So, J Mac, when you hear that there could be more people out there, more celebrities, right, who are already settling cases quietly, are you surprised? Are you shocked?
That's a smart thing to do. You don't want us in your business. You don't want to be on the Isaiah Factor.
The morning show, right?
On the morning show. And then you heard his mom. She's doing what a mom is supposed to do. If you pay my bills, I would say, hey, that's not the guy I know.
But then again, of course, you don't treat your mother that way. You may not tell your mother what's going on.
Come on, man. His mama know.
Oh,
his mama
trust
know.
me. I'm being naive. The naivete is showing tonight.
Your mom is going to always know what you're doing. You might think she don't know, but she know.
Got it. Bayoji, let's talk about some of the celebrities, which no names have been named as of yet, who may have settled these cases. Is that the prudent, smart thing to do?
I think considering that these civil cases are closely tied to the federal case that Diddy's facing, it's certainly a smart thing to do to perhaps try to get your name out of the public eye, get your name away from the specter of the federal investigators, and just try to settle your case privately, assuming that there is some sufficient evidence to believe that these civil attorneys have something on you.
Defendant in one of these cases and someone suing you. would they typically require a non-disclosure agreement to be signed once they settle it with the plaintiff or the victim in this case?
You know, if I was an attorney representing one of these individuals accused, I would certainly request for that before agreeing to any out-of-court settlement. Otherwise, it kind of takes away the point of doing it out of court. It's going to end up being public. I might as well continue to fight the allegations.
And sometimes, Catherine, when you're a victim in human trafficking or sex crimes like this, money can't always satisfy you. And do you foresee any of these individuals, whether it's men or women, coming forward later, even though they've signed the NDA, even though they've been paid, saying, look, it was me and this is who did it?
Well, after you get paid, right? Okay, and you done spent that money, and then you got to take care of the I, the R, and the S, who are real pimps, then they're gonna talk. You know, what's done in the dark comes to the light, and who? I know you don't have a 50-foot bed in your backyard, do you?
Don't assume too much.
I'm just trying to tell you. But it's interesting because I was, you know, I've been following it, and today on TMZ, you know, it was stated that a celebrity that's bigger than P. Diddy.
If I was to release those tapes, the world would shut down. Okay? If I showed one of these tapes, I'm telling you right now, the whole music industry and Hollywood, it would just grind down like this. They're all going to start pointing at each other like this, and it's going to be bad.
Oh, it's going to get bad, all right. Welcome to Popcorn Planet's Diddygate coverage. I'm Andy Signor, and there's been a lot of talk about this alleged memoir from Kim Porter. Her family is now deeming that it's fake. Diddy's own lawyer saying it's shameless, it's a scam. Amazon has actually pulled it because of Sean Combs' kids saying that it's fake. But now the author has gone and broken his silence and done an interview with The Art of the Dialogue. And it's pretty damning, guys. It's pretty fascinating. Now, look, I'd love to get this guy on the show. We are trying our best. This is the author. His name is Chris Todd. And he's here talking about a lot. We're going to go through some of these clips, and we're going to break this down even further in our live later today. There's also Jaguar White right out there doing a lot of stuff. We got so many updates, guys. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that bell for all alerts. Smash that all so you get notified. And when you get notified, hit that like and leave a comment down below. Helps get these videos in the algorithm, and it's important we get this stuff out there. Now, do I believe this guy? I don't know what to believe. But man, Art of the Dialogue, the guy who's interviewing here does not. He gets extremely defensive. It's kind of a hard watch. I'd love to have Chris on, and we're reaching out to him. Chris, come on the show.
So I'm going by what she's saying. She's saying they do. That they have threesomes with multiple celebrities. They're listed in the book. So yes. Am I going to go to Will Smith and Jada and ask them that? No, I'm not.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So.
Am I going to ask Jamie Foxx that?
Could you pull that up for me? I want to show you something.
Sure.
Now, again, you got to remember, this is a book that he got allegedly through a thumb drive, a USB drive stick that has not only Kim Porter's alleged diaries, but tapes and evidence. And he was given this after Kim's passing in a way to sort of get the truth out there by others. That's ultimately what this is about. Now, this guy's written some other books. other crime stories, etc. And that's ultimately, I guess, why he was selected. It's still a little confusing to me, but here's some more. Will Smith coming up again.
These are serious.
New York City's other federal jail, the Metropolitan Correctional Center, back in 2021, 2 years after Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide there. A Bureau of Prisons spokesman telling NBC News they, quote, take seriously addressing the staffing and other challenges at MDC Brooklyn, adding the director appointed an urgent action team and they've increased staffing.
MDC has historically had tremendous problems and the problems aren't resolved.
Combs' lawyers originally hoping he could await trial under house arrest at his mansion, now arguing for him to be moved to a prison in New Jersey in the lead up to this trial, citing the prison's poor conditions, violence, and deaths. On Wednesday, his lawyer said he was being held in a special housing unit with an extra level of security.
Yasmin's back with us now. So what is next? Is he going to be in jail in this facility until the trial begins? Is there a chance he could, get moved earlier than that?
As of this moment, as of this hour, as of today, yes. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, they're going to be appealing this thing next to the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals to overturn the judge's order here to try and get him actually released to his mansion on $50 million bail, wanting a GPS monitoring system, limited visits from family members, friends, so on and so forth. That is what they're proposing because of course, the violence I talked about in that piece inside these jail walls. They also, in the meantime, Hal, want to get him moved to a jail and or prison in New Jersey. The judge so far has essentially said that is up to the Bureau of Prisons to make that decision. Nonetheless, it's all going to be on appeals leading up to the trial. His next court appearance, by the way, October 9th. So looking for that, of course, and any decisions coming out from the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals on this order.
Can I say something? What do you think Will Smith would say if I called him up on his cell phone? I pull his number through a PI, right? And I call him up and I go, when Kim was pregnant, she says she's on the phone with you and that Sean's on the phone with you, Will, and that he's talking about this. Do you think he's going to admit that that really happened? Right now, with everything that's going on with Sean Combs and all these celebrities are silent right now, do you really think he's going to talk to me? Do you think he's going to admit to that?
I don't have an answer for that.
Okay, I'm just giving you.
I'm not. The reason why I'm saying this because
I don't think any of us. I paused for effect because a vault did exist, according to his sources, and those tapes that were in the vault were flown to other countries.
That's from the sources directly, so I have to believe them.
And this
not have to, but
right.
I have no way. How am I going to?
You see how that you run it that you have.
Do you expect me to go in the safe at his house?
No.
I'm a shot.
No. What I'm asking you is, like I said once again, because you're the guy who's spearheading this thing that allegedly comes from Kim. So me asking the questions, I'm like a can of spray paint.
Yeah.
I don't know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know which wall to go, and tell them. Right. So that's the reason why I ask these questions, because I actually don't know. So, and so, like I said.
Now, fair, but he's a little aggressive in this. The commenters agreed. Let's get a little bit more into these tapes.
So you didn't, these are other things that you didn't include in why did you keep that out?
Correct. Because I can't reveal everything at once. It's too shocking.
It's too shocking if he reveals everything he knows at once. Now, one could argue, oh, come on, dude, just put it all out there. But he's now alleging it's that bad, guys. And here's that quote from the beginning in full context.
If I was to release those tapes, the world would shut down. Okay? If I showed one of these tapes, I'm telling you right now, the whole music industry and Hollywood, it would just grind down like this. They're all going to start pointing at each other like this, and it's going to be bad. We've already set it up. We have multiple attorneys. We know how to do it. It's not my first rodeo. I solved the greatest murder case in history. 3 of them. I know how to do it. We're going to do it, but just going to come in pieces. And there's also ways we can, let's say, not censor it, but we can kind of soften it, right? Like the whole tape doesn't have to come out. all the tapes. I don't have all the tapes. There's other people that have the tapes.
However, he is currently at a position where survival is the only thing that matters and where fame and wealth are meaningless.